Hello, everybody, and welcome back. In this episode, we're going to talk about object-oriented programming. Really, when we talk about object-oriented programming in today's society, well, today's world, there are multiple different languages we can use, and most of the languages are all adhering to that concept of object-oriented programming. One of the best ways that I really like to think about object-oriented programming is I like to talk about a ball, the concept of a ball, like a baseball or a basketball or football, any kind of ball, and how it applies to the world. I've done this in other trainings that I have done, face to face and with groups of people, and I've said that when you stop and you actually think about a ball, you stop and think about the definition of a ball. Let's say a football. The football is a different shape than a baseball, but there's still a ball. The football is a different color than a baseball, it's still a ball. The football has strings, a baseball has seams. It's still a ball. So the reality is that with object-oriented programming, we're just defining objects as they are, and then we're defining characteristics of that physical object. Again, a baseball, white, red seams. The name is Rawling. All the different aspects of the ball. We don't care where that ball is. That ball could be in Hickory, North Carolina, or Boston, Massachusetts. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that it's a ball. So when we talk about classes and we talk about object-oriented programming, we define a class, and that class turns into that one aspect, that ball, that one thing. So Visual Basic, we got to think about classes as being the definition of the object. We can inline develop the object itself and then set that up. But the way that I like to do it when I do a lot of my programming is I like to develop a class for it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a class right now. So outside of the module, I'm going to type in, public class, and we'll say ball, right? And then inside the class, now I have the class itself. We actually have to build what kind of aspects of the class do we want to talk about. So in this case, we're going to put public, and C# is going to be string, but in Visual Basic, string is at the end. I'm doing it all in VB right now. The difference between VB and C#. C# if you want hardware acceleration, VB if it's just everything else. That's the short way of saying it. I know people argue with me, but yeah, the C language is really hardware specific. Hardware intense, you get a lot of hardware integration. Where Visual Basic is more like, let's just keep it simple and do the simpler stuff. So alright, so let's think about a ball. So what are the things the aspects of a ball that we care about? So first thing we're going to do is the name of the ball. So it's a baseball, football, soccer ball, whatever. The name. Let's do let's see, whatever. Color. Size. Actually, no, we'll do width, right? Height. And I know it's not really, because it comes it's circumference for a ball, I know, but whatever. Brand, sport. This is kind of narrowing it down. I mean, we could take away sport because that's a little bit more specific than we want. Yeah, let's actually take away sport. Let's just go brand, core, which is going to be core, air, whatever. So we'll just do these ones right here. Okay, so put a comma here, core as string, because they're just basic strings. That's all we care about. Now, when we come back to our basic program, because we got a class, we can actually define that up in the program, and we're actually going to do it up here. So we're going to go. So when I go dim B as new ball, right? Now B, whenever I call B itself, I can say B dot, and it's going to give me the brand, color, core, height. So now I literally create B as a ball, and then when I call B dot whatever, it allows me to define or take back from that specific object, that one object. So if I say b.color equals red, right? Red. Oh yeah, you know. Anyhow, my keyboard doesn't like me. So I say b.color equals red because it's a string. Now when I come down here, I go dim s. Yeah, come here. Dim ss equals b.color. Because I define b.color as red up here, whenever I call b.color any further down, that physical object is going to be red. Now, if I wanted to define a second ball in my world, so I wanted to say, okay, well, we got ball A and we got ball B, then I can do this. I can go dim b2 as new ball, b2.color equals blue, right? So now b1, well, you know, that's going to be a string, I'm sorry. So now b1, in my program, b here is red, and then b2 is blue. So down here, if I call b2.color, SS turns into blue. So now we physically have two, like, objects. We got ball 1 here, we got ball 2 over here. So now we actually have two different physical objects, and we could define them differently and then hold them, all the variables, all the values, into one class, into one actual object. And we did that just by calling the class function down here. So by defining the class function. Now, one of the other ways that I use a class function, and I do this a lot, is when I create a database. What I'll do is I'll create the class along with the database. So say we create, let's just come over here. Say we create a database where we got, you know, ID. It's an integer. This is using SQL Server. And we set the identity spec on. Yep, no problem. And we got our first name, Bakar 200. Last name, Bakar 200. And then say employee phone, right? Bakar, another Bakar. Yeah, car 200. 200. And hire date. Hire date. Let's call this a date and time, right? All right. So we just created this table. We're going to call it employee, right? Perfect. So now that I created that table called employee, now I'm actually going to come over here. I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to call it employee as well. So public class employee. And then I'm just going to grab this column right here. Let's hope and pray that works. Yep. And we're actually going to make this public. Yep, public string. Remember, in here we got to separate them with commas as string. And just because I like the way I make it look better, I do this right here. Now what I did was I created a database and I called it employees. And then I made a class subsequent to that called employees, and I keep the class structure the same as the database. And as I said, we're going to get into a little bit more professional concepts here. So this is a little tiny bit more advanced. But the reason why I like to create a class that coincides with my database is because now inside this class I can add subs or functions, whichever one I want. Function is get employee, right? And simply inside the get employee, I'm not going to type out the code, but I'm going to type out, you know, just what I wanted to do. I want this to be, good lord, different keyboard than, you know, by val emp id as string, right? So now when you call employee and you call the function get employee, you have to pass the ID. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to get the employee data by employee ID, right? AMP ID. We're going to put it into, so actually let me write out. So dim query equals select star from employee, right? Where employee, let's just do this, where where ID equals, and yeah, no, that's right, okay, equals, and emp id, right? So now what I'm doing is just basic query and then dim ds as data set equals gl. I have a function in one of my DLLs that I call gl, which is it's just pretty much get, and then I got another function there called SQL run, and then I pass in the query and I pass in the connection string, right? So then what that does, that sends me back a data set with all the results. And then for each a as data row in ds.table0.rows. So now what I'm doing is, in this case right here, because my data set has a 0 table, or it could have multiple tables, whichever one I want, I know because I wrote it, it always has 0. Table 0 is the first table. So what I'm doing is I'm just looping through each row of that table, but I'm going to actually assign the results to each one of these. Now, what happens is, and as I said, this is an advanced concept. So, if you're a new or a beginner programmer, this may not be the course for you. This may not, well, the video for you, of course. This may not be the video for you. This is just a little bit more advanced because what I'm doing is I'm using a little bit of stuff that I haven't talked about to fill the array. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually filling the object. So with the result set that's returned back, when I say select star right here from employee where ID equals whatever, I'm going to get back ID, 1, employee, Jason, last name, whatever, employee phone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hire date today. So I'm going to get all that back in this specific order because I use star. Otherwise, if you have any questions about SQL database and how database transactions work, you can go to Microsoft or Google database, SQL database queries, and they'll tell you that you can actually rearrange the columns that come back, but using star just sends back the default order. And then I'm saying ID equals the first one, first name equals the second one, third and last name equals the third one. So then what I'm doing is I'm actually filling. I don't even need a function for this. I can just change it to sub. That's fine. So what I'm doing is when you create a new employee, and then you call .get employee and you pass in the employee ID, we're going to fill that new employee variable with whatever it is. So the way that I would call a function like this is just like this. So let's get rid of this stuff here. Go dim em as new employee, right? So em.get employee, and then I pass in the ID. And what this right here is going to do is I don't have to assign this to anything. I don't have to go em equals because it doesn't return it. So down here in the function, when we look at the function down here, we see that all the sub is doing is just filling the public, the public variables with whatever the results is. So I don't actually have to assign this specific function to anything because we're doing em equals new employee. So em now takes over now has the attributes of ID, first name, last name, employee phone, and hire date, right? And then when I call em.get employee 1, 2, 3, what that's going to do is that's going to fill em's ID with this, first name with that, last name with this, employee number. So we can use classes and then to create objects and then define the objects with these variables right here, and we can say that these are the aspects of that object, and then we can actually use subs inside of that object to either fill, save, alter, tailor, whatever. Generally, again, as I said, this is a little bit more of an advanced programming video because I use a little bit more advanced concepts than most people do. But generally, whenever I do create a new class, I like to give it a get and a save function. Being that I know that each one of these, if you write it in C#, each one of these variables has a get and save, a get and set. But in the class, I like to provide a get and a save function within that class. So as we see here, get employee. So when you call employee, you can call employee.getEmployee, and it will get the employee information. And then the other one I like to provide, and this definitely is a function, and I like to call it save employee, right? And you don't even have to pass anything in, because at this point when we call this, we already have data inside of here. So we don't have to pass anything in. We already know what all this stuff is. So at the save point, we just want to write all of this back to the table. So then at that point, what we do is we just do something like a dim query equals insert into employee values, and then in this case right here, we're just going to copy these and paste them in, because now all we're doing is just a basic input, right, into a database. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's other controls that we will talk about in the future of what we do before this. This right here is just going to insert it. What we kind of other stuff that we want to do is before we insert it, we want to verify that the record doesn't already exist. If the record exists, don't insert it. But if the record doesn't exist, insert it. In this case, I'm just inserting it, because this is only for a demo to show you. So right there. So now we do the query. Now we do the dim. DDS string equals GL, because I have another function called SQL update in my function, the query, and then I pass the const string. So this is that's actually in one of my programs that I wrote. This is a function that updates the string, and then if dd equal dot index of error greater than -1, then response dot write error, right? So pretty much my function will just pass back error if there's something wrong, and all I'm doing is just saying response dot write error, response, if I could ever spell right, RESPON. Wow. It's because I'm inside the class. Alright, never mind. Wow, sorry about that. Dim RTN equals, usually I use RTN as a variable to return. So RTN equals error, and then DD else. This keyboard hates me. RTN equals save OK. Oh, wow. I give up. Save OK. Period. And then return RTN. So what I did was I just essentially built a save inside the employee. So now we got the employee, we got the get employee, pass the employee ID in, and it will get us the data for that employee. And then in that same function, we can change it, and then we can just say employee.save employee, and we'll save whatever is in there. So just a little bit of an example of how that works. So now right here we got employee 123. So now say we want to change employee 123's name from Sam to Peter. So we do emp, so emp dot first name equals Peter, right? And then emp dot last name equals Doe, right? Cool. So now what we're doing is emp is a new employee. We're going to get employee 123, which at that point it's going to be like John Peterson, just say John Peter. Sure. All right, so employee at that point is going to be John Peter. Now we want to change the first name to Peter and then the last name to Doe, and we want to save it. We want to commit it to the database so that way it's updated and it updates all of our records. Now because we created the save function in the class, we don't have to worry about coding it here. We can literally just call emp.save employee, just like that. And what that'll do is that'll actually go out, call that function, the save function, and the save function will actually commit it to the database. So now, using a class, we created the employee. We defined all the stuff we want to know about the employee, ID, first name, last name. and we got the subsequent database that matches that as well. As I said, whenever I create a database, I like to create a class, and generally that way there I can always just call that class. I can call the get and the save, and not have to worry about coding it a million times. Then we create the get function, which goes out to the database and just fills the public values up here with the database data. And then we got the save function, which actually just takes whatever that object has in it and saves it. Now, again, the good part about doing object-oriented programming is that each object acts as its own individual thing. One last concept that I like to talk about, and I do it a lot, and I kind of realized it about a couple of years ago. Everybody likes to create a one-to-one reference. With object-oriented programming, we don't really care about the one-to-one relationship. We really think about the object as being its own independent object, and where it is does not matter at the time of creation. And the best way to think about that is to think about when we create, let's just say, a pen. When I create a pen, I do not create this pen and say, okay, well, this is always going to be Jason's pen. No, a pen is a pen. It's full of ink. It's got a black tip. It says Papermate on it. It does not matter. At the time that this pen that I'm holding in my hand, which I'm holding a pen right now, was created, it was not created by Papermate and says, this is Jason's. Better example is a student in school or an employee in a company. If I create an employee in a company, I'm not saying Jason is working at store 2629 for Walmart. I'm saying Jason is an employee, and then we're going to assign him to 2629. And then say he decides to transfer to 1918, another store, he can transfer to 1918. I don't have to have two different Jasons. One of the problems that we saw in programming, and I think about 10 years ago, 5 years ago it changed, was we had a lot of programmers that were developing a program with saying that this employee is only an employee of that building and no others. So now if that employee wanted to move to another one, we had to terminate that account and create another employee and then put him in the other building. The problem with that is that now for one employee we can have 10 different accounts. That's crazy. We don't need that. We don't need to try to manage 10 accounts over the span of all of our databases. So what we do is back to the object-oriented programming is we go and we create the one employee in the employee file, and we got one object. And then what we do is we create a relational database or a relational function where we now say employee ID 1 is in building 2629 starting on April 1st. Well, April 3rd, employee 1 left 2629 and went to 1918. So we end date that. We say employee 1, 1918, April 3rd, start. So think about it that way. And that concept is a little bit more advanced than just basic programming. But when we create an object, whether it be an employee, whether it be a customer, whether it be a ball or a pen or a glass, always think about creating the object first, defining that object, saving that object, and then now go ahead and assign that object to a building, but use a relational table to assign it to a building. So this way here, you're going to save yourself a lot of time, you're going to save yourself a lot of coding, you're going to save yourself just a lot of headache down the road, because then when that object, if you do it the other way, when that object wants to move to another building, you're going to have to terminate that object and then recreate that object. It's crazy to do that when we can just end date one relational field and not have to recreate the wheel. So that's my advice to you guys in this one is use classes Classes are a great thing for object-oriented programming because not only can you create the class and define all the variables about that class, but you can also standardize the way that you get the data for that class and the way that you save the data for that class. And you can just call it over and over and over and over again and not have to keep rewriting it. Also, remember that in this world, when we do create one object, we can always create the second object, and it's not going to affect the first object because they are literally two different things. So I guess that's my spiel for today, the lesson for today. If you got any comments or questions, please post them below in the comment section. Like this video, and if you want to hear anything else, you want to learn anything else, please comment and let me know. And this way here, I'll cover whatever subjects you want me to cover. I enjoy doing this stuff. It's a whole lot of fun for me. So let me know what you think, and have a wonderful night.